Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Welcome to another episode. You're going to have to bear with me on this one. I have been on the road and had a bunch of travel, and I'm running on fumes. I got back to my home base at midnight last night. Managed to catch a couple of winks, and we're right back at it again today. This is our planned weekly discussion, noon Wednesdays, noon Eastern time every Wednesday, talking about the financial PMA. Think of UnWoke.Academy and the financial PMA as where the freedom economy meets follow the money. So, in brief, I have a background on Wall Street. I've worked in institutional finance on some really, really big things, some of which may have actually impacted your life and people around you, and have worked on all kinds of stuff. I've had the great fortune of making a lot of great connections, but a long time ago, I started to see the woke invasion of Wall Street, and I don't think it's healthy or appropriate. So, I want to talk today a little bit about how we consume and from where we consume information. And I don't mean to upset or offend anybody, but I will point out that I am a fairly typical male person. And once, a long time ago, prior to meeting my lovely wife, I was a single male. And what do they call us now? The left attack us because of, what is it, cisgender, heteronormative, or whatever they attach this thing as if being a regular, normal human male person is somehow some sort of ailment or something. Whatever, they attack us on everything. But our thing years ago, working in finance, there were a bunch of us guys that worked together, and I went through a lot of the things that you see in the movies and TV portrayals. I worked in the bullpen once a long time ago with a group of people, mostly guys, and we, yes, I know that this fits some stereotype, but we used to actually talk about how attractive the people were on different media broadcasts. And back then it was, Robin Meade, very attractive brunette woman who was a presenter on, what was she, CNN, I think. And that people had their preferences, and that, who's hot, who's not kind of conversation. And it shouldn't shock anybody, but those conversations are normal and they take place all the time. And frankly, I'm well aware that women have the same conversations and talk about whether or not they think a guy is attractive. And for a while, that was kind of like, that's really all we needed to care about when we were watching MSNBC. I don't think it existed back then. I forget when that started. Or whatever news channel, CBS or Fox or um, CNN or whatever, you would talk about the kind of the studio presentation of it. And that's where I want to get to. There's still kind of a pervasive thing in society where we tend to consume information from sources that can be very questionable, and maybe we're willing to overlook where that information is coming from or what's actually being presented to us if the person looks handsome or beautiful or the studio looks great. And yeah, I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. Over the past couple of years, there've been all kinds of great podcasts that have come out, and they're countering that narrative. You have people. I'm actually going to use myself as an example because I'm one of the co-hosts of something separate from this, unrelated. But in addition to this, and Unwoke, I am a co-host of Ohio Political News, and there are not just three of us. There are three kind of main people. We hop on and do a podcast once or sometimes more often per week, and we have all kinds of great guests. But we're pretty straightforward, just people broadcasting from one guy's in his basement, another has set up kind of a studio like I have in a home office. But we make a point of being the best citizen journalists that we can be. So we don't have fancy studio lighting. I'm not going to not going to pan the camera around and show you what I have set up for lighting here. It works, and I'm perfectly happy with it. But we're not doing the thing. Who was the guy? I don't even pay attention to him. Who is it that got booted off the air because they're losing 20 or 40 million dollars a year or something because they have 200 staff people or whatever. And some of the actually candidly some of these podcasts have gone off the rails and they have major production value as well, but I'll leave that for another conversation. My point is that it can be visually stimulating and it can be entertaining to get your quote unquote news from those types of sources. But please be aware that that is also an environment where you can be manipulated. It's not that you're not going to be manipulated, and there are people willing to manipulate you on podcasts. It's just, I think, much less common. And it's probably, I think, much easier to discern. By the way, I am keeping track now on 5 different platforms. We are live right now on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook, and Substack. If you have a question, thought, comment, or concern, please do share it. I will try my best to incorporate that in the discussion. But I want to make a point of pointing out my intention with this thing. I do several podcasts and I want to, of course, put my best face forward and do the best that I can for you. But I actually have no intention, and I would decline if somebody showed up today and said, I'll give you $1 million of broadcast and we'll put in studio lighting and you can have a fancy desk to, and, we'll have hair and makeup come in and, do you all up and everything. I would decline because I know where that leads. I end up getting handcuffed and I can't say what I want to say, what needs to be said. So I wouldn't do it. And I hope and encourage the world to pay close attention to the podcasts and the broadcasts out there. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to give a nice tip of the hat to our friends over at OBBM Network. They have a whole national network and a growing roster of people that are broadcasting on their channels. And they're creating the new freedom economy alternative to the major broadcast networks. The major broadcast networks, I think, they really probably effectively died on the vine years ago. And they've been propped up, arguably and allegedly, by Facebook message popping up. Okay, save that for later. That they've run out of money a long time ago, and then they had to turn to things like big pharma advertising dollars and some really bad things that ran legacy media off the rails and into propaganda zone. And their trust in society is, from everything I'm able to gather, is at an all-time low. Pardon me. Excuse me. Let me get a sip of water. So, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's not good that it happened, but I think it's good that people have become or are becoming aware that they're being manipulated. They're being encouraged in manipulative, propagandized sorts of ways. Nowhere is that more true than the world of finance. We have all kinds of constant malicious mayhem that happens. And the more people become aware of it, and it's not just my podcast, there are lots of them. Look up and take a look at the people that are doing the hard yeoman's work over at the Economic War Room. That's Kevin Freeman and that group over there. They're doing great work exposing stuff. There are all kinds of people. Who's the guy? I always forget his name. He makes great sort of fun these podcasts where he exposes things. Oh, it's right on the edge of memory. It's a young guy with a mustache and he's got long hair. And he does these videos where he'll show stuff in the background. BlackRock owns all these different companies and They have different names, but effectively behind the curtain, it's basically one owner. Those are the kinds of things. They're not going to have the panache. They're not going to have the studio $1 million per episode appeal, but be discerning, because it's entirely possible that the stuff, and actually I'm going to argue that it's very, very likely that the stuff that has the studio appeal is lying to you and it's manipulating you. And it's people like me. I hold myself out as an honest arbiter. And I hope that you come to agree with that, but challenge me by all means. And you can do it now. Ask questions, or tell me if you think that I'm wrong on any of the comments that I make about CRT, DEI, ESG, and the manipulative corporate equity index, whatever. If you think that I'm wrong, challenge me on that. And I've been telling my friends and colleagues in the world of finance for years, challenge me on it. Uh, so far, there aren't any takers. I mean, I've been doing it in many different regards. So that tells me there aren't people out there willing to tell me that I'm wrong, that I'm lying to you, that I'm giving you bad information. But there are people out there that are perfectly willing to name call. They call me all kinds of stuff. I'm anti this, this isms, and none of it's true. That is to try to get you to stop listening or to get me to stop talking, because nobody really enjoys being called names. I got to the point a long time ago, and it really started with me. I didn't like being called racist. I was actually advocating for education. And here's the crazy thing. I can't just leave this there. It's just we're on a little side path, but I'm going to interject this because it's important. I spent years, and I'm still very, very involved in the fight and advocacy for a return for traditional education in K through 12. Um, and when I first started doing that, there was what was it, 2020, March of 2020, we had one of those first major viral videos within, it was a school board meeting, which usually gets about 6 views, went to something like 485,000 views. And Nightline ended up coming and filming me and mic'd me up, and I've been interviewed because of it. All this stuff spun off of that. But it was during that period of time where people started coming out of the woodwork and calling me racist. I was like, what are you even talking about? And if you go back and watch the video, there were a whole lot of us there that were pushing back against that school board. And we were white, Jew, I think there were some Muslims, there were a black, at least one black family. Were there some Middle Eastern? We were like the face of like what's supposed to be the UN. We had like this global face. And suddenly, for advocating for education, I was called racist. And I was like stunned by that. I hated it. And I brought it up with people. I'm like, why? Where are these people coming from? I'm not, that's not racism to say that what you're doing is destructive and harmful. But I actually had many, many black friends. The left bill them as black conservatives, who were like, just ignore them. They overuse the word racist all the time to try and shut people up. Just ignore it. It's nonsense. Everybody knows you're not actually racist. And I was like, oh, okay, well, good. That gives me free and clear path, because I'm going to keep pushing, because I want kids to have a proper education. Pardon me. So the catchphrase that I've used in that arena is, if the education is the key that opens all doors. That's the expression that I like to use. So in the world of finance and many other places, the same holds true. You get the left try to crush debate, quash opposing viewpoints, and get everybody lockstep involved in the narrative. And for people like me to get out and advocate against and try to get the truth out to you, It's a battle, and it's a battle worth fighting because, yes, I can see, and I saw years ago when I first released that letter, and I still have to look up the date. It was late 2007, early 2008, in that time frame. Um, oh no, it occurs to me that had to have been mid 2008. Anyway, in 2008, all those years ago, I released this big letter internally at a Wall Street firm admonishing this behavior of artificially funneling money from retirement plans, from pensions and unions, etc., into a company called BlackRock. I did. I wrote up this letter that got me in big trouble. I saw it early on, and that really set the stage. That set things in motion toward where we are now, and Unwoke, and my willingness and using the connections that I have to challenge. But I will say it was and would have been, and actually is very, very easy to get into that environment and make a fortune off of doing all the wrong things, of being that harmful person. And I know people, I've actually sort of stayed connected with a bunch of them, or I'm aware of them at least, who came up through that same era that I did, that were in the bullpen with me, that were in my uh, class or whatever you want to call it, that in my era, who have who knows? They might be the three mansion, private jet, yachts, country club. They've got the gated property in Miami and a house in Milan, Italy. Whatever. That was actually fairly easy because in that arena, I worked on lots of things in the multi billions of dollars. And it's so tempting. It's not tempting. It's almost insisted that you steer things in crooked ways for that are profit focused, and you can make a lot of money doing it. And it never sat well with me. And I used to get in these arguments, and that's just not the type of person that I am. That pushed me in the direction where I am with UnWoke.Academy, and then that led to the formation of the Financial PMA. So, as promised, with that sort of preamble aside, that's a little bit about um, an important subject to me, and that's how we consume information, and touching a little bit on how UnWoke.Academy formed. Let's talk now about the Financial PMA, because that's an offshoot, and that's where I'm encouraging people to either come join us, become a member. We'd love to have you. By the way, if you have opportunity, if you have the means, we'd love to have more subscribers. Please do like and share this information. Let's get the word out, because not only do we want to defund the woke and take the money away from those power sources out there that are doing bad things. It's I'm telling you, the other side of USAID and things like it, if you're following that, the corrupt money that allegedly flows through these taxpayer funded entities and into non-governmental organizations that then allegedly encourages anti-Western, anti-American propaganda and behaviors, and crushes free markets and attacks individuals, etc. If you're concerned about that, the other side of that coin is Wall Street. We're funding the things that we don't like with our IRA, 401k, etc. So come join us, get the information out, or take everything that I'm doing and duplicate it somewhere else. If you have people that work in the world of finance, take this to them, encourage them, tell them, like this stuff that they're doing over at UnWoke.Academy, and let's build something like it. Get your friends to duplicate it. I'm not claiming royalties. I just want to move the needle. We need to move billions and trillions of dollars out of the hands of really, really bad actors who hate America. Clearly, I can argue that they hate America. if nothing else. Set all the other stuff aside for the moment, all the woke things, and whether or not you are on board with or okay with the rainbow mafia and whatever. Let's just assume for a moment you don't care or you're okay with that. Two things to know. One is we're showing now that as we move back into free market environment, and that's what Trump is doing, that's where he's pushing, and it's working. He released the America First investment policy on February 21st. We have money for the first time in years flowing back into new business enterprise. That's where your smart investment is. Forget the people telling you about, this crypto or that precious metal or whatever. Sure, maybe that has some part of your portfolio, but many of those people have skin in the game. They have something to gain from it. For the most part, 99.99%, my objective is to just get people this information and you run with it wherever you want. If you're part of that 0.01% who wants to come and join us in the private membership association, just know this. We're taking all the research and data that I'm doing and we're deploying it. And again, I want to be clear, that's a choice. I'm giving you that choice and really encouraging you. Please take advantage of all the research that we're doing. Not only do you want to move your investment dollars, your hard-earned retirement savings, out of harm's way, get it out of the thing that all sanity predicts it has to come down. We have so much overvalued emphasis and so few companies that are vastly overfunded. It's insanity where we've gotten to with that small number, that little globalist clique who just absorbed trillions and trillions of dollars of overcapitalization. Take it away from them. Put yourself in a better position, at least some of your portfolio, in things that might be the next new thing, because that's when the money is made. That's what we're seeing, and that's the push that we're seeing from MAGA, America First, Trump, the White House. That's what needs to happen. We need to get more people paying attention to that. And of course, you're going to see the legacy media flashing and razzle dazzle, and they're going to continue to do their nonsense kabuki dance, talking about the market. I'm air quoting that. The S&P 500 is not the market. That is a tiny, tiny little globalist fraction of the overall markets of what you might be invested in. And they, being those legacy media, their financial backers, the advertisers, and that small number of companies, they would love it if everybody in the world all thinks that all money needs to be invested in those 40-ish companies. Can you imagine if you're like the chairman or CEO or on the board of one of those 40 companies and you just like continue to rake in virtually all investments everywhere, and you crush it, just strangulate and destroy free market economy, your competitors, everything in the mix. Sorry, got distracted. It's another message. So we need to do the best job that we possibly can of informing people that money, and you're saving up when you're making those, whatever it is, your bi-weekly, your monthly contribution to IRA, your annual contribution to IRA, your 401k payroll deduct, your brokerage savings. You can take what we're putting out at UnWoke.Academy and the financial PMA that's implementation. That's the next step. That's how do you personally implement that. You can take it anywhere, any online brokerage, any financial account that you have anywhere. And we even walk you through the steps of how to deploy it within your 401k, which is a great environment to be trading because you're tax deferred. Same thing with IRA accounts. Wherever it is, let's take that money, get it out of harm's way, and stop funding the woke. So let me finish a thought that I started on. Assuming for a moment that you're okay with a lot of the woke stuff, Rainbow Mafia and the DEI and all that, let's focus for a moment on national security. We had Justin Bernier on this program as a guest, and he talked about the threats to American military and national security. He talked about what's called the CPA report, which was delivered and presented to Congress around May of last year, 2024, maybe a little earlier in the year, whatever month it was. It was presented to Congress showing that certain managers, and BlackRock was specifically referenced, are using what are called offshore managers to funnel money and invest U.S. savings dollars. That means you in your IRA or 401k or wherever you're doing investing, quite possibly funneling the money through offshore managers and into funding things like the growth and expansion of the Chinese Communist Party's military. Yes, that means as they're exploring new aircraft carriers and fighter jets and building new, more powerful intercontinental ballistic missiles and fabricating war machine, and they're growing their military at an alarming rate. We're funding it. You might be funding it. So maybe you're okay with some of the wokadoodle stuff. I'm hoping you aren't. But if you are, at a minimum, take a look at what's happening with what you're funding, and is it funding the direct affront against American and Western values? Because as we're seeing through those interactions with Gavin Newsom in California and Xi Jinping, who is the president, he's head of the Chinese Communist Party. There are people within the United States who are perfectly cozy with some of these dictators, and you have some that are clearly showing interest in these horrible regimes elsewhere in the world. And that shouldn't be okay with us. It shouldn't certainly be okay with any taxpayer for our American dollars to be going deducted and taken via taxpayer tax collections and put into anti-American, anti-West destruction. And the same holds true in your portfolio. So yes, I know there's some work to be done here. If there were a magic wand, I'll tell you, if I could get the real information, if I could get this show or something like it exposing what's really happening in the world of finance onto one of those shows, CNN or whatever, Fox, I don't care. I would shut this down tomorrow. I'm not doing this out of some self-motivating, aggrandizing. I want the information to get out there so that we can protect ourselves, so we can hopefully maybe keep America for future generations and not defund and destroy ourselves from within by funding the very things that seek to harm us. So there's one other piece to it that occurs to me. I made a couple of show notes in the lead up to this. That has to do with a psychology experiment that took place a while ago. I'll have to paraphrase. I forget exactly where it was, but you've probably heard about this. They did an experiment where they brought people in on a college campus and they had them turn this dial up on an electric shock. And there was a person on the other side of the wall who, if they got an answer wrong, the person who was the test subject, who was supposed to be initiating the electric jolt, the charge to the person on the other side of the wall, they were told by a person in a lab coat when to turn it up and how high, etc. And it was a really revealing experiment. If you're not familiar with this, you should look it up. I'll see if I can find it again. Every once in a while, through my years, I've stumbled upon this, and it piques my interest. But effectively, what they had is an environment where you had this person supposedly leading the the experiment, who brought in a volunteer who's turning this dial and flipping the switch or whatever, and initiating a shock on the other person on the other side of the wall. And they would scream out in pain and agony. And the doctor would, if they kept getting answers wrong, would have them keep turning it up and keep shocking. And there were people that were in the experiment that were initiating the shock who showed hesitancy. Wait, are you sure this is okay? Should I do this? And there are many people that went up into what could be assumed to be fatal, life-threatening shocks, and they stopped because the person in the lab coat was telling them that's the right thing to do. The trick to the experiment is there was no electric shock. There was no threat. There were actors screaming out in pretend pain. They were never in any threat. But the people that thought that they were initiating the experiment, that were doing the electric shock, they were the actual experiment to see how far you could push someone if you were presumed to be an authority on something. That's an incredible experiment, and it's incredibly revealing. And it goes back to my comments about the people in really nice suits. Yes, I will admit that there was a time where I prided myself on all those things, the watch I wore, the suit that I wore, and the car I drove, and all of that stuff. When I worked my way onto and was recruited by Wall Street, it's easy to get caught up in that sort of the pomp and circumstance of it. And once you're there, it's very easy. In fact, again, I'm going to argue it's expected that people in that position abuse and manipulate their authority. You want to, according to history, what you want to do is continue to sort of make people feel warm and fuzzy, and the right kind of big smile, and lavish some attention on them. And meanwhile, you're effectively really picking their pocket. And I don't think it's more true anywhere than it is in the world of retirement plans. That's my area of expertise. That's where I've worked for decades in the administration of workplace retirement plans, things like 401k plans, because you have massive pools of money set aside that hardly anybody looks at, sometimes for years and decades, unlike personal investments where there's an expectation of recurring regular meetings, and you can expect that at least one person is opening their statement and reviewing things that might call and ask questions, etc. That's rare. It's very, very rare. Even when you get into the many billions of dollars, oftentimes everybody there is just in this wait and see mode for years and years and years and decades without proper prudent oversight. And so for those people who show up in the really nice fancy suits, and I was recruited to be one of them, it didn't click, it didn't fit for me because I wouldn't kowtow to the powers that be and sell the product du jour. So that was kind of short lived. But in that environment, it is those people are like the scientist in the lab coat, the quote unquote quasi scientist, the person in the lab coat saying, turn up the electricity, shock them more, turn it up. And it's horrible. That's not right. That is not helpful to mankind. That's not helpful to the United States and Western values and the things that we hold dear. That's why it didn't click. It didn't fit for me. And I ended up leaving before too long and forming my own company. As a side note, for people who wonder about creating Unwoke and then creating a subscription-based model, and that's what we are. Again, if you are so inclined, we'd love to have you as a supporting a subscriber, as a member, what have you. Ultimately, I'll just give you the Cliffs Notes version. Once all that stuff happened and it had Nightline show up and mic me, and I get picked up a bunch of times in newspaper Epoch Times, and there's a documentary that came out on Newsmax that features me, and that put me in the crosshairs of regulators. And because I can't be canceled, the cancel culture thing, lots of people like to try and call your boss and complain, or they give you negative reviews. And I don't have any of that. There's no avenue to come after me that way. So regulators have spent over 4 years attacking my company, and it's mostly wound down now. I did that by design and by intention so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. I'm keeping up these podcasts and fighting back and exposing the bad actors, because I feel compelled to. I feel I have to. That's my role, apparently. So I let that company go. It's almost completely gone now. So that there are people that ask about the motivation behind it. Why do I do what I do? And I do get those questions periodically. That is the reason and reasoning behind it. For years, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's brutal. Some of these people are just vile, awful, awful people. They will lie repeatedly, directly in your face, and shout and scream and throw tantrums and whatever. That's weaponized regulators. I'm still not backing down. I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. And that is where we are with UnWoke.Academy and the Financial PMA. By the way, that's our website. It's financialpma.com. As I said, go check it out. Love to have you as a member, but if it's not a fit, consider applying it wherever you do like. Take it to your friends or family members, your current advisors, whatever. Get them to at least consider forming their own, to take your money, get your money unwoke, not funding the woke stuff. And if you can do it, convince them that running a private membership association is a much better deal than being conjoined to and attached to a Wall Street firm. It's way better, much more free. They are not pressured into selling whatever the latest product is, and they're not going to, once they get there and get sort of their feet under them, those are the types of people that will stop trying to convince you that the S&P 500 is the market or NASDAQ or whatever. Those are tiny, tiny little microcosms of the ultra globalist mega cap that everybody's trying to convince you, the investor, need to put virtually all your money into. It's nonsense. Don't buy it. This is Jonathan Broadbent. This has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to come back, bring some friends next Wednesday at noon Eastern Time. We'll see you then.